In the beginning of the movie, if you do it about Jimmy and the Bath Avenue crew, start off in a hotel room and have Jimmy walk out of there exposing himself to Tommy Reynolds' girlfriend. It'll build up. What it'll do is you can open up and show about Jimmy's character, okay? And then after you go through his life story, at the end of the movie, go back to the same hotel room where Jimmy came out of the bathroom. This time, instead of him being naked, he should be sitting in a chair. And the film should pan into his back, right? You should see Jimmy sitting on a chair like this with his legs spread open, and in between him, you should see a head. That head should be bald. And then the camera should pan in, and the guy who's in between Jimmy's legs with the bald head should look up. And there you, Fat Sicilian.
Wow, Rob from Convict Inc. just dropped a nuclear bomb on Fat Bald Sicilian and Jimmy Calandra. Now let me fill you in. There's a community on YouTube that's nicknamed MobTube, and it's basically a bunch of people who are fans of the mafia, former low-level criminals who like the mafia. I mean, I like the mafia. I've pretty much watched every documentary out there about the mafia, so I'm not making fun of them. And they you know, basically a lot of guys who became informants who used to be in the mafia or associates of the mafia have done interviews after they got out of prison, and you know, that's their way of trying to make money. They're trying to sell the mob. They're trying to sell their former lifestyle. But 100% of them are informants. You know, you're not going to find anybody who was associated with the mafia making a career on through podcasting or on YouTube who hasn't informed. And I don't have a problem with that because I'm not a gangster. But at the same time, if you're in the mafia and you get hit with a RICO case or a conspiracy, or you get, you know, hemmed up on a murder charge, you're going to prison forever. And most of the guys on YouTube who are in this mob community, this MobTube, have informed. Then you've got guys like Fat Bald Sicilian who are just former low-level criminals who are fans of these guys, and they are fans of the mafia, so they're basically happy to communicate with these guys because they grew up watching mafia documentaries and stuff like that. So to actually have somebody from the mafia, even though most of these people were around in the mafia in the 2000s, way past the mafia's glory years, you know, these guys were pretty much the generation that ruined the mafia, the generation that really shouldn't even wear the title of mafia. They were more like street gangs because, you know, let's not kid anybody. We're not talking about the days of Lucky Luciano. I mean, we're talking about the year 2005, 2006, when the mafia was decimated and basically turned into a gang of, like, street thugs, guys who were selling drugs and stuff like that and doing, you know, petty stock manipulation and stuff like that. So we're not talking about, you know, John Gotti's and, you know, Carlo Gambino's or Paul Castellanos. We're talking about the guys who came way after the fact and got themselves hemmed up in RICO charges and snitched to get out of it. But nonetheless, they were associated with the mafia. So Fat Bald Sicilian, I don't have anything against him, you know, but I do understand he's going to defend those guys because he loves the mob. He's a big fan of the mob. Rob from Convict Inc., he did time with these guys. He just came home from doing 26 years. He's only been home for less than a year. And he was in federal prisons with the mobsters. And he keeps it real. The mobsters do not get down in the pen. These guys are on the low-level penitentiaries. They don't fight. They don't stand up for themselves. They're not tough. All they do is pretty much benefit from the people in the pens who are fans of the mafia, so they fan out when they see them. And Rob always kept it real and said, I've never been a fan of these guys because they look down on people. And that's true. People in the Italian mafia look down on people. They're very arrogant. They're very proud. Even though the majority of them were high school dropouts, the majority of them were juvenile criminals and lived a criminal lifestyle their entire lives, but they've always wanted to make themselves out to be these proper thugs, when in reality they're just thugs. You know, they wanted to make themselves out to be better than the blacks. They wanted to make themselves out to be better than the white gangs, but in reality they're just as messed up, you know. And like Rob said, you know, Jojo Russo, you know, somebody who people who love the mafia know about and love, he did drugs, and he would go to Rob because Rob was a known drug addict, and he would go to Rob and say, hey, don't tell anybody, but I want some dope. You know, and Rob said he experienced that a lot in the pen. He experienced that all the time. The mafia guys always had this myth that they didn't associate with drugs or do drugs. they looked down on drugs, but in reality, they were going behind each other's back to try to score drugs from Rob, and they told him, don't say anything, don't say anything to them. So, I support Rob. I know they're going to gang up on him. Rob is small. He only has 7,000 supporters. Fat Bald Sicilian is going to look at this as an opportunity to get his YouTube numbers up, because everybody knows a good beef, stirs up controversy, and that equates to views and money. Just like the Art of War says, if you slay somebody in the public domain, just like a gladiator, you're going to appear to be powerful. And yeah, that's in the 48 Laws of Power as well. Defeat an enemy, and you shall prosper. But yeah, I support Rob because he actually was in these prisons. He did 26 years. Fat Bald Sicilian, I don't really know much about him. I know that he was a low-level criminal. I know that he's a fan of the mafia. And of course, he's going to support Jimmy Calandra because Jimmy Calandra has blessed his channel. And yeah, I think that Fat Bald Sicilian actually has more in common with Rob, because Fat Bald Sicilian was a drug addict as well, and Rob is a former drug addict. And I think that he can learn a lot from Rob. But, like I said, Fat Bald Sicilian, his name is Fat Bald Sicilian for a reason, because he wants to equate himself to the mob. He wants to throw that Sicilian in there. Instead of saying Fat Bald Italian, he had to throw the Sicilian in there because, he really thinks that makes him mafioso. But I support Rob. And, yeah, I don't even know what Rob... I mean, I know why Rob's upset. He's upset because Jimmy Calandra turned out to be an informant. But like I said, all of these guys in the mob tube world, they don't care about the fact that these guys, first of all, they were not even a part of the glory years of the mob. They were a part of the street gang era of the mob, and they became informants. All of them. And they'll proudly tell you. But the fact that the mafia has such a hold on the American psyche through movies like The Godfather and stuff like that, people are just so enamored with the mob because it's like the cream of the crop when it comes to crime. But in reality, these guys don't represent that cream of the top. We're not talking about Carlo Gambino. We're talking about, like, the street gang era of the mob. So, yeah.